Howdy, folks. I'm Limber Lima Beans, loudly limiting locust lunches.
Remember,
And Amber, how are we limiting locust lunches?
well, I mean, if you're a lima bean, you might be a locust lunch, so they're probably like running, screaming, like, don't eat me, don't eat me.
There you have it, folks. I am running away in terror, constantly, of the locusts. Let's get started. Alright, folks, and our first letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Refusing to Pay for My Sister's Wedding After I Caught Her Snooping Through My Home Office? I'm a 29-year-old male, and I own a small technology company, and I work from home. Recently, my sister, a 27-year-old female, was visiting and asked to use the bathroom, which is right next to my home office. After a while, I noticed that the door to my office was slightly ajar, which was odd since I always keep it locked. When I confronted her, she was snooping through my financial records and even my safe. She got defensive and said she was just curious and wanted to know how much money I make, especially since I haven't offered to help her pay for her wedding yet. I flipped out and I told her that she had crossed a big line and that there was no way that I was going to contribute to her wedding now. She left in tears, and my parents are furious, saying that I'm ruining her big day over a mistake, that I should apologize and reconsider. Am I the jerk for standing my ground? All right, folks, what do you think?
No, you're not the jerk. Your sister is not entitled to your money. Like, even if she hadn't snooped, she still wouldn't be entitled to your money.
Yeah, I'm just thinking this is an odd situation because how many siblings contribute to other siblings' weddings, right?
There seems to be a sense of entitlement on Reddit for, it seems like the golden child gets everyone to fund their wedding.
Yeah. And I mean, like it's odd. It's an odd situation. I don't think OP's in the wrong here, and I think that this is that she snooping through his stuff. She could have just asked him how much he makes, and then if he didn't answer or told her that this was private information, then just to leave it alone, right? Like she doesn't need to know how much money he makes. She's not entitled to that information unless he wants to share it.
Mm-hmm.
But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. And Diminishing Patience says, Comedy Gold. They can pay for it. She's their daughter, not the jerk. I mean, yeah, the parents could pay for her wedding. But they may be assuming that if OP is really well off, then like sometimes families feel like the well off person needs to start like paying more and stuff like that. And Material Job 7080 says, it's the classic. Sister does something stupid, goes and rallies up the parents, and wants to be the victim. Real victim has to apologize. Queen of B&B says, how did she get into a locked room and a locked safe? And Gordon F23 says, she's also a cat burglar. And Carrie Katoria says, plot twist, OP's sister is a cat. So, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I didn't realize the room or safe were locked, but
Well, I think, like, when he said locked, I kind of assumed just closed.
yeah.
I didn't think he meant, like, locked. And as for a safe, I don't know. Like, maybe he left it open, or what he meant by a safe was filing cabinet. I don't know. It's weird, right? So I think sometimes things aren't in English, and when they get translated over from a different language, they might come across with a different meaning. That's usually my assumption with things that seem a little weird, is that it's usually like a translation issue.
I mean, I just usually gloss over details, so I didn't even realize anything was locked.
All right, folks, and our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Leaving When My Future Mother-in-Law Made Me Sit in the Kitchen When She Had Guests Over? I recently got engaged to my fiance Mike. I get along well with his family and his mom. Future mother-in-law is nice, but she's the type that isn't afraid to hide her pride when it comes to her wealth. I come from a working class family, and Mike's family is wealthy. No one made me feel as though I was less than or mistreated me. However, what happened yesterday shook me to the core, and I don't know how to feel about it. Yesterday, my mother-in-law invited me out for coffee at her home. No one was there except for her. She said that she wanted to chat about some stuff. I made the effort to leave for work and go over to her home. I got there and she welcomed me, and she said that she would make some coffee after she made a phone call. After about 8 to 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang and she excused herself to open the door. She returned quickly and asked if I would come with her into the kitchen. It was strange, but I followed her anyways. She smiled at me nervously and told me that she had some unexpected visitors, who are her friends, and asked if I would sit in the kitchen till they left. I was too stunned to muster a response, and I looked at her with my eyes widening. I asked her why and said that I would leave if my presence was an issue. She said no, not to at all, and insisted that I sit there for a while until she calls me out. I don't know what to do. I felt humiliated and so offended. I tried to call Mike, but he didn't respond. I decided just to sit there and wait because I didn't want her to think that I was being disrespectful. I waited around 20 minutes and then I decided to leave. I walked out of the kitchen and past future mother-in-law and her guests, and then I opened the door and I walked out. Future mother-in-law's face looked pale when I walked by her, and it was though she was saying, "Why did you come out of the kitchen?" It was obvious that I wasn't welcome there anymore while her guests were there, and I was hurt. I didn't get a chance to tell Mike because future mother-in-law called him and told him that I walked out in the middle of my visit. I tried to explain to him what really happened, and he said there was nothing wrong with what his mom did. He explained that his mom has a protocol for her visitors and doesn't like having guests of different levels of social status, so that there wouldn't be any discomfort among the guests. He even said that she did this to spare me the discomfort and that I blew it and insulted her in her own home and in front of her own guests. He started stonewalling me because of it and said that I should respect his mother and her home. All right, folks, what do you think?
Not the jerk, and honestly, you get a serious fiance problem here. He should have stood up for you. This weird class system is not okay.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if she can't, like, let people see that she has a daughter-in-law who's not wealthy, like, that's a problem.
Well, what about after the marriage, right? Is she going to be treated like a Cinderella?
I think she's getting a taste right now of what it's going to be like. She's never going to be the right class, so she's always going to be hidden away, always hidden from certain people.
So I think that this is really problematic. I think that the mother-in-law really did something awful here. Now, I would understand a little bit different if this wasn't about classes, but more about like, oh, I need to have a private conversation with this person. They're a client of mine, and it would be improper for you to overhear some stuff
No,
here.
I promised confidentiality,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
or something like that.
So I would be a little bit more sympathetic to the mother-in-law at that point in time, and her saying, "Look, I really want to meet with you. This is like an emergency situation where I really have to meet with this client, and if I don't, then they can get mad. So just please bear with me and hang out in the kitchen for a few."
Right. Well, and she's showing her priorities here too. Like she expects OP to just sit around doing nothing until she's done gabbing with her friends.
Yeah.
Like, that's not cool. And the fact that her fiance isn't immediately telling his mom, "This is inappropriate, how could you do this?" like, is really telling.
Yeah, it's a red flag for sure, right? And I think that the mother-in-law, she really needed to just tell the guests who are coming, "Oh, by the way, I have guests over here right now. Can you come back later?" Right? And that's because she should have focused her attention, like you were saying, on OP as opposed to these other guests.
Like, it seems like they came over unannounced, so it's their fault they came at the wrong time.
And I think the polite thing would have been to introduce OP to the guests and not just like shun her or exclude her. Say, "Oh, by the way, I'm meeting with my future daughter-in-law. She's blah, blah, blah here," right?
Right. But the fact that, OP's fiance buys into this, "Oh, she's just protecting you from being embarrassed." How is it embarrassing to socialize with different people? Lots of people have friends across income brackets. It's
Yeah.
not some horrible sin to be poor.
Yeah. And not even poor, right? She's just like,
Right.
she grew up, what, middle class or working class? I don't remember.
I think middle class, she
Yeah.
said. But yeah, like, it's just so weird to me that the mother-in-law in this day and age has this like weird class system going on in her house.
But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. And Kindly Celebration 223 says, "Not the jerk. So is the plan to have a separate celebration of your marriage with your family and a separate one for his? So the high class family doesn't have to mingle with the lower class people? Will you be allowed to attend the wedding celebration with his family? Will you be allowed to attend his family events? Will your children inherit their father's high-class status or their mother's low-class status? Your fiancé is okay with you being treated like trash, to be hidden away because you're not good enough to sit at the same room with people and his family deem better than you. And they all think that they are better than you." And OP replies, He explains how it's different when it's family, meaning that I'm welcome to come to her home and meet the family. He said that she does this with relatives and friends only. In her words, informal occasions, but I'm pretty sure that the visit from her friends was not a formal occasion since it was all of a sudden.
And aren't weddings pretty formal occasions?
Very formal occasions, I would think. And Cyrus says, not the jerk, sounds like an excellent reason to dump him, and to be happy that you found out before you got married rather than after. I should add that my issue is less with what his mother did and more that he was okay with what his mother did. And OP replies, thank you. Honestly, his response and attitude towards the whole thing was really upsetting. I felt what my future mother-in-law did was belittling and offensive, yet he failed to see where I was coming from and instead tried to justify it. It hurt. Not just what happened, but how he responded afterwards. Alright folks, and our next letter is titled, I Hate My Husband. I am a 24-year-old and my husband is 28. When we met, I was 20 and he was 24. We only dated for 8 months before we got engaged. My husband came from a very wealthy family, like 4 houses, farmland, full-time help, rich. I wasn't poor growing up, but I was middle class at best. When we first started dating, my husband didn't tell me how wealthy his family was. In fact, he told me the opposite. He fabricated a story about growing up poor, his parents were both dead, and he hadn't talked to his sister in years. We moved in together after 6 months, and I paid for the rent for the first couple of months because he was unemployed and looking for a job out of university. 2 weeks ago, I got a Facebook friend request from a woman named Kathy. She shared the last name with my husband, and I accepted it, maybe thinking that it was a distant cousin or something. I did what anyone else does, and I stalked her Facebook page relentlessly. And it didn't take me long to notice how similar she looked to my husband. Same nose, same eyes, different hair color, but I was pretty sure that she had dyed it red. Something in my gut told me that this was his sister. I let it go and I went to bed, not telling my husband. But the next day I got a message from her. She found out that I was married to her brother and she had been wanting to meet me for years. She explained her brother had stopped engaging with the family a little while before meeting me because of family drama, and she never specified what. We texted back and forth, and I found out exactly what my husband was hiding, the wealth being the biggest thing. Even though he had left the family, his parents still gave him a monthly allowance until he got a full-time job after we met. I had paid for everything for months, helped him find a job. I couldn't afford to see my brother's wife give birth a couple of years ago because I paid for our rent that month and airfare had been too expensive. I cried about it for days because my brother was my best friend growing up and I couldn't be there for my nephew's birth. I told my husband that I was going on a spontaneous trip to see my nephew because I couldn't stand to be in the same room as him. I have been at my brother's house for 2 weeks, and I've been reaching out to lawyers. But I want to talk to him first, see if there's any reasonable explanation. I know realistically there isn't, but this is my husband. I don't want to fathom what this means. It's not about the money. I wouldn't have cared if he was rich. I've always been brought up to be independent with finances, pay for what your own is. But I miss the milestones in my life. I lived paycheck to paycheck for months supporting us, all while he was getting monthly allowances? What was he even spending it on? Edit, to clarify, I know for a fact it was his sister. I also know that she isn't lying about the allowances. I was sent screenshots of bank statements at my request. She contributed a portion to his allowance for a little while. Also, I will speak to him, but how do I know that he's not going to lie about everything? He told me stories about him growing up poor, as an orphan, and it had given him an extreme trauma. The whole thing was a lie. That's what gets me. Alright folks, what do you think?
Oof. Yeah, I mean, I think talking to lawyers is the best thing you can do. I mean, I don't even know what you do at that point in time.
So, I get him disowning his family. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was perfectly justifiable if he wanted to drop his family, then to drop his family. And maybe he felt like the money that he was getting from them he didn't want and he couldn't figure out how to return it, or maybe he donated. Who knows what he did with it. However, none of that justifies him lying about his past.
Mm-hmm.
He needed to be upfront with OP and tell her, look, my family, they're rich, but I don't I'm disowned from them. I don't communicate with them anymore.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, he's like accepting the money from them every month and, just keeping it for himself. And he knows that OP is suffering. Like, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel so bad for OP that all this time, it seems like he could have had the money to cover the rent so she could, like, go see her nephew be born and all that sort of stuff. And he was just happy to let her pay for everything.
Well, and that's the thing that kind of also really makes me annoyed about the situation is that he didn't need the job for the money, right?
Hmm.
He chose to put his pride above what was best for OP in that situation. He was really stressing her out with this whole living paycheck to paycheck thing. And he could have explained that, he has this family and he's going to take the allowance from them. And for now, that's the way it is. But he wants to get a job and be independent from them and not be, under their thumb, so to speak, right? So I think that he really handled this in a very, very dishonest way to the point where how can OP trust anything he has to say?
But at least if he still has the money in some kind of secret bank account, OP might be entitled to something in a divorce.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that, right? I mean, I'm sure she would rather have an honest husband
Well, of
than money
course.
from a divorce, right? I feel bad. This is a terrible situation for OP, and they really didn't deserve what happened here, right? Like this is a world-shaking type of thing, right? And I think that it just goes to show that you just can't lie about your past.
Hmm.
You really need to be upfront and honest with your partner about what your background is. Otherwise, they're eventually going to find out, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it is really hard. Like, if you've been struggling, like, if I suddenly found out that Brian was secretly like a multi-millionaire, I would be a little bit miffed that, you had kept this from me all this time. Like, it's going to be very hard because, we're not rich. And, like, to think that what we could have done if we had that money, like, like, I can understand why Opie's so upset about that because it's just such a, she missed out on so much because he was lying to her.
Yeah. Well, again, like the money is a kind of a separate issue in some ways, right? Because like it doesn't sound like he had access to the millions of dollars. It just sounds like they were giving him some stipend. And the question I think OP has is like, well, where did that stipend money go to, right? What did he use it on? And that's problematic. He may have it like hidden away in a bank account, but that again, like he could have used that emergency fund. He could have put his pride aside and he could have helped OP in her time of need instead of like making her live paycheck to paycheck, right?
Well, if he has this like orphan trauma that he made up too, like has he been using that in the relationship in ways? Like, are there things he holds over OP's head, like, oh, I can't do this because of my trauma? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if he's making up trauma and using that as an excuse to like uh make OP like bend to his will in some way, like that's not cool.
Yeah, I mean that's very manipulative if he is doing stuff like that.
And I don't know that he is. I was just like, because she brought up the trauma thing, I'm wondering like what kind of stories he's told her and what impression that has given her of him, and if it has changed how she like treats him.
Well, and then to not to hit this point home any further, right? He could have just said that he doesn't want to talk about his past,
Mm-hmm.
right? He didn't have to lie about it.
Mm-hmm.
He could have just said, I don't want to talk about my past. It's really upsetting to me, and there are some traumatic things that happened in my past, and I don't want to talk about my family.
Right, because you can still have parents and have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to make up a fake orphan story to have trauma.
Yeah. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. All right, folks, it is tea time. Grab your beverages of choice. I've got some tea right here, and Amber, she has a joke, and it's probably a real joke.
Knock, knock.
Wealthy family, go away. I have to lie about my wealthy family. Please go away.
Knock, knock.
I told you I have a dog. It's very vicious. Woof, woof, woof.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
A little old lady.
I don't know how to yodel. I'm sorry.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
A little old lady.
A little old lady. Who?
Great yodeling. You should sing professionally.
I should. Let me know what you folks think of my yodeling. And I have a special guest tea today. I have the matcha tea. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Fantastic Friday, folks. I hope your Friday is off to a great start. Amber, we need some kind of moral advice and or guidance, and please have it on wealth.
If you're getting to the point of marrying someone, you need to be honest about your finances.
I think that is a good point. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye!
My husband came from a very wealthy family, like 4 whole horses.